If you didn't join us for this morning's session, quick overview of DaXtra. We've been innovating the recruitment technology space since 2002. Our technologies are founded on AI. What AI means for us is the ability to process language or process data within or understand the language that your candidates write about themselves in their CV and your clients write about their requirements in their vacancy job descriptions. We use that data and we have to machine learn to really understand from a huge corpus of data we're processing. In fact, we're processing over 100 million CVs every single month in 40 different languages. So we're understanding that data within CV to connect recruiters with candidates, and more often to help recruiters search and match across that data, and then automate those tools to ensure clean data and a consistent process within your mission critical CRM system. We've done that for over, I think, something like 200 different ATS systems. Here are some of the major ones. So the tools we're going to be talking about today have all been integrated into the leading CRM recruitment platforms out there. And again, this is where we're experts in delivering those integrations. So let's take a minute to think about some of the factors that could be affecting your data health in your database today. So this question came up on our earlier session. Look, CVs get stuck in recruiters' inboxes. How can we make sure that those CVs get in the database? So that's affects an issue. You may have the ability to add candidates in your CRM today, but are recruiters actually doing it? We're humans. We have we want to have high value contact points with our candidates and clients. We just may never get round to loading that candidate, and we've moved on to something else. The other thing is your CRM is central to everything you're doing, but there are inconsistencies in the process for how data is loaded into the CRM. There are different parsing systems connecting into your CRM, pushing candidates in there. And because there's different technologies and methods doing it, you're ending up with incomplete candidate records in the system, and then candidates can get lost because the status aren't correctly tracked. Perhaps the source of the candidate isn't being tracked, or you're not getting a complete profile of the candidate. So that incomplete data can not only be due to the technologies, the job board advertising tools that may be connecting, your website that's connecting, or it could be that the recruiters just don't want to fill out those mandatory fields that you've put in the system. And of course, if you're taking these sort of shortcuts and you're not filling out this information correctly and consistency with a process, that's going to affect your searches and your automations. Another area is skill codes. Inconsistent and manual coding. Again, this is going to be thinking about not only about how you're searching for your candidates, but how you're enabling automations and enabling some of these mandatory fields to be completed and having a process. Unless as recruiters, I may look at a CV and see the candidate skills one way. My colleague may look at the same CV and then see or not be able to spot some of the skills that I've seen and maybe coding that candidate differently. So, and even if you've got a native parser where you can drag and parse a CV in your current CRM, you think, yeah, I've got parsing wrapped up. This isn't of any interest to me. Well, think about the codes that it's identifying, the attributes and the terms that are on the CV. Often, if it's only a perfect spelling match for how it's coding the database and it's representing the CV, it will automatically code. And then it still needs some manual validation over the top of that as well. And it's not in context. When it's spotting the term, it can't see if that term is related to a job title, a qualification, or company. For example, if Oracle is mentioned in the CV, does that relate to an Oracle developer, Oracle as a database skill, an Oracle DBA, an Oracle certification, or Oracle the company? And you may find that the net effect of having all of these systems integrated into your CRM is that you're getting duplicate errors in the database. Again, it could be these solutions are only checking for first name, last name, email addresses. If that matches, it will update as a duplicate. But if it doesn't, if any of those, if the email address changes, it will automatically think that needs to be a new candidate record. And again, it's prone to human error. Can you be certain that your recruiters are not seeing the candidate, 4 duplicates of the candidate already in the database, not knowing which is the correct one to update, and they'll just create another duplicate anyway. And this really leads to a lack of visibility. Again, where recruiters are adding candidates, with technology platforms such as job adverts adding candidates, there's no way to audit all that incoming data or manage that process in your CRM. And all these factors will affect your data health and the success of all your automation tools as well. But guess what? We've got a solution to manage that for you. And I'm going to hand over to David to talk about that and run through a little bit behind the scenes and a demonstration.
Cool, brilliant, thanks, Aid. So what I'm going to take you through now is how we automate the creation of candidate records, how we automate that entire workflow, and how we ensure clean data, manage that entire process, and how that can all power further automation and other solutions that link up with your database. Of course, as everyone knows, that is the foundation of having good, clean data to then power and trigger everything else that goes on in your CRM. We do have other automation solutions as well. So perhaps another time we can take a look at how we automate the process of rebranding candidate CVs to your company templates. But please reach out to us if you're interested in that and any of our other solutions. So I'm going to share my screen now. And you should see I've got a generic Salesforce database loaded behind me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you first of all how we automate and how that looks for the consultant actually interacting with this data, and then we'll take a behind the scenes look at the process that got us there. So you should now see a Word document, which is a CV here. So we've got Jason and we've got a standard looking CV, and I want this to go onto the database. So for today's demo, I'm going to send this as an email, could be a PDF or Word document, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to send this on to a designated mailbox that we'll be monitoring to load onto the database. So I've clicked send, and that's all a consultant would have to do. And that's one option. We can hook this system up to monitor multi-posters, your website, job boards, emails, network folders, Dropbox, any inbound source of candidate data that you can think of. We will sit there and act as a bridge between all of those locations and the CRM and ATS that you are using. But today I forwarded on a Word document. So let's now show the end of the process, and then I'll come back and fill in the gaps. So if I just copy this email address here, let's come and find this candidate back in my generic database here. Perfect, this candidate's been created. So you can see here, now your databases might look slightly different, but we've got contact details, employment history, education history, attachments, any sort of structured data. As long as it exists on the CV in the first place, and there's a field for it inside of your database, we can then populate that data. So let's pause there. That's the end product, but let's come back and actually take you through the workflow that CV just came through. Now this interface here, this is coming behind the scenes, as I alluded to at the start. This isn't typically something we actually demo too much. It's actually quite exciting to be showing you this here today. So this may be the first time you've ever seen this. Now this isn't for the consultants. This is not a consultant's platform to log into. It's for administrators. And it's a way of controlling the process of importing all that CV data into your database. And as you saw at the start, as far as the consultant is concerned, they click a button, they green flag in their multi-poster, they forward on an email, the job is done. But now I'm going to fill in the gap between the start and the end. Now, again, you might be sitting there thinking, as Adrian sort of mentioned, I've got CV parsing. You know, CV parsing is a commodity, and every CRM pretty much has got some level of CV parsing in there. Some of it also uses our CV parsing under the hood. But DaXtra Capture brings additional value to simple CV or pure CV parsing, I should say. So not only does Capture have our market-leading CV parsing, which processes and has the highest accuracy across the greatest number of languages, over 40 different languages, but we also provide more of a automated workflow or a robotic administrator, which does all the heavy lifting and ensures good, clean data enters your database. So how do we do this? Well, lots of things we do. First of all, we ensure one parsing workflow for all candidate data. Now, CVs are inconsistent at the best of time, as you will all appreciate, but then adding 3 different parsers to that, you're going to get very inconsistent results. If there's ever anything you need to troubleshoot, there's 3 different avenues you need to explore. DaXtra Capture brings them all into one and brings our audit trail all into one as well. We also bring our higher level of deduplication. Most CRMs have a few touch points to understand if a candidate's a duplicate, but we actually go even deeper. So we're looking at things like, of course, name and contact details, extra contact details, address details, postcode. We can also look at work history and education history to get all these different touch points to understand if there's a duplicate in the database. And if there is, we update that record. If there isn't, we create a brand new record. But we also handle exceptions and can apply business rules. So what I mean by exceptions is, let's say the system isn't 100% sure if it's a duplicate or not. What does your current system do now? Does it not process the candidate, or does it just create that duplicate? If it can't 100% guarantee what it is, what happens? So what we do is, whatever source it's coming through, if we're not 100% sure, we would just put the brakes on that CV, alert an administrator, and flag it up to say, 3 new candidates came through this week. We're not 100% sure if they're duplicates, or perhaps they're missing mandatory fields. Again, with your current system, that might be a job for the recruiter to do on the fly on every single candidate. If it's missing have to add a source or have to add any mandatory fields, again, that's not something that consultants want to do. And you probably know better than me, but if you make things mandatory for humans to fill out, they will just tick the first option and quickly get on with the rest of their day and get on with what you're paying them to do, make better placements and do that a lot faster. But finally, what we can also do is apply business rules to these workflows. We can do so many different types of things here, each custom for every different client. And that's what leads us on to what you can see here as being the spools. So just as a high level, some ideas could be, in fact, let me take you through the spools here. So each different spool here is effectively a different workflow that we can apply, or different logic, different business rules we can apply to a candidate depending on how they've entered the business. So it might be you have one set up for your website to filter candidates on certain details. You might have one set up for your multi-poster where you can apply a default status to candidates. So it's really up to you. You can have as many as you like. But for example, we were speaking to someone the other day who recruits contractors, and they wanted to say, if current work history, the final date is not present, so it's an actual date, then we know that they're out of work and therefore they're available. So automatically set status to available in the database. And that's just one scenario. We can apply so many different rules depending on how that CV's entered the business, and different logic before they load onto the CRM. So enough talking about it. Let me actually jump in and dive into some of these. So I've got lots of different spools set up. I'm actually going to jump into this one here. And you can now see these are the kind of the categories that a CV would then flow through before it gets onto the CRM. So again, this is an administrator's view to control the workflow of loading candidate data. So you can see here, the green section is where the majority of CVs will all throw through, and that's completely automatic. We either create them as a brand new record or we could successfully update them. So nothing to action there. But in the yellow here, you'll see this is where we flag up a CV for a human, an administrator, just to come in and double check before it gets onto the database. And that way, with our market leading parsing, we're going to get it right pretty much first time, every time. And in the cases where we're not 100% sure, we flag it up, and that's how we ensure we're not polluting the database with irrelevant or wrong data. It's good, clean, structured data going forward. So here you might see there's missing information from a CV. 2 candidates haven't got all the mandatory fields. Again, you can come in and check that. Or hang on a minute, we're not 100% sure if this candidate's a duplicate or not. Can you come and manually check that? And lots of other filters as well, junk filters, filtering. Again, we can take you through that in a bit more detail another time. But let's now come on to our successfully loaded candidates. So let's load up that one I just processed through. Again, this is the behind the scenes of our parsing. So what you can actually see on the left-hand side is the original CV. Now, you don't need to worry about this too much. The different colors just relate to different sections. What would be important to you is what's on the right-hand side. So we extract the data from the CV and we populate it into a structured format, and all of these would just map directly to a field inside of your database. And we do that for lots of different sections. So we've got summary information of the candidate. Either we can write the summary ourselves, or we can actually pull it from the candidate's CV directly. The full work history, start dates, end dates, company names, job titles, contract, perm, location, all of this key metrics, all these key structured data we pull out from the CV and we populate directly into your database. But what I wanted to end on here before we come back and wrap up is our extracting of skills. Now, it's something Adrian mentioned at the start of how we code the candidates. So what we do is, first of all, we automate the process. So you're not asking your consultants, whether you have 10 consultants or 200, to code the candidates all slightly differently. We do that consistently and automatically. We also normalize the codes as well. So if I choose J2EE here, we have normalized this automatically to refer to Java. And we can set that up custom to you every time. So no matter how you set up your terms, we can map these child terms back to the parent term. And finally, we also score the terms as well. So we can look at the context of this CV, how experienced, how proficient are they with using Java, and we give that a percentage of, in this case, 97, because it's part of their current job title, Java Architect, using J2EE, JMS, JMX, and they've been doing that for probably over 20 years across the entire CV. So that's the process behind the scenes. All of these fields can be customized and populated into the database. Short on time, I'm going to hand back to Adrian there just to wrap that up. You're on mute, Adrian.
Oh, thanks, Dave. That's good. I wasn't saying anything relevant anyway. So just saying thanks for running the demo. So I'm going to share my screen again. There we go. All right. Okay, so thanks, Dave. Just to summarize, that's the process Dave's just shown you there, connecting all those incoming sources of data, running those candidates through a consistent process, and ensuring those candidates end up in the database, and then think about other automation tools. We have partnerships with both Herefish and Sense to start automating that process through to the candidates. So just to wrap up there, what does clean data powered by automation really look like with DaXtra? Well, this really enables you to take control. By implementing DaXtra Capture with your mission critical CRM, you can connect all of your incoming sources of CVs across the entire business and push them through a consistent workflow. That will give you a full advanced deduplication of that data, which is really going to improve the health of your ATS and CRM. So if there's new information on the candidate CVs, we're going to pull that and update it inside the candidate profile and ensure that you're not getting duplicates in the system as well, taking out any human error in that process. Those clean data profiles, as well as having that contact information, as I mentioned there, be able to normalize skill coding, putting a consistent process through, and enabling a full work history of the candidate. So if you're searching on data, on codes alone, that's a great way to implement Capture. Again, if you're not so worried about coding, our search and match technology can help you there as well, which is all built off the same tech as well. Again, by connecting all your solutions into Capture, you can start to apply process rules. And again, we can also parse out data within the email as well. So if an email comes in with a CV attached, we're going to be able to track source from the subject title, or if it's come from a candidate that's applied to a vacancy on your website or a job board, or even if it's a candidate you found with our search and match tool, we'll be able to track the source so you get clean ROI from your CV sources in the database as well. We can also apply advanced rules to filter out candidates if there's not enough information in the CV, and automatically shortlist those candidates against the vacancy. Again, we touched on CV styling as part of that process. Every candidate that comes into your database and pushes through Capture, we can convert those PDF CVs and automatically create a styled Word CV. So this is saving hours and hours of time every single week for your recruiters by automating that process, and then ensuring there's a consistent cover sheet, consistent branding in your terms and conditions in every CV before it goes out the business. And then really Capture here is okay, fine, it's our automation tool to load, or your automation tool to load CVs into the database, but it's also going to enable automations for your business, as I mentioned with Herefish or Sense, but also by connecting all of our three solutions together here, DaXtra Search Nexus will not only find the best candidates in your CRM, but source candidates externally. And then when you load those captures into the those candidates into the database, you can automatically shortlist them, push them to static lists, create a styled CV, and again, our partnerships with Herefish and Sense can do the automatic engagement of the candidate from there. So when you're looking at a shortlist of 30 candidates, which in fact could also be automatically matched, so DaXtra Search, can process a vacancy, a job description, run a search, create a shortlist of candidates, and then you can use these tools to reach out. And then rather than making 30 or 40 calls to your candidates, you're making 2 or 3 really engaged, high value calls with the candidates interested in those roles.